My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 34 years old, and last spring, I thought I was doing something beautiful. After months of planning, I hosted my parents' 40th anniversary celebration at our old family home in Asheville, North Carolina, a quiet, green corner of the Blue Ridge Mountains where everyone knows everyone and family pride still matters. I paid for everything: the flowers, the music, the food, even the string light canopy I spent a weekend hanging with my boyfriend Nathan. It wasn't about showing off, it was about gratitude. I wanted to honor my parents for the life they'd built, the home they'd given us, the years they'd held this family together. Or so I thought. That Saturday afternoon, the yard smelled of barbecue and roses. Neighbors laughed under the oak tree. My mom's favorite jazz records spun on the old turntable. For the first time in a long time, I thought, maybe this will heal us. Then my younger brother Eric stood up, a plastic cup of beer in his hand, his voice loud enough to slice through the laughter. Guess Lauren wanted everyone to know she's the successful one now. Must be nice having money to burn, huh? A few people chuckled, awkward, unsure. I forced a polite smile. I thought he was just teasing, but then my mom's voice cut through. Eric's right, she said. You've always had to make everything about you. And my dad, who barely ever raised his voice, added softly but firmly, honestly, Lauren, sometimes I think this family might have been happier without you. The air stopped moving. Music faded into the background hum of the record static. I felt the heat rise in my face, but my body froze. Around me, guests stared, some pretending to sip their drinks, others whispering behind napkins. I had spent $7,000 to create this moment of unity, and now, standing in my own parents' backyard, I was being erased. My chest tightened, my vision blurred. All I could think was, why? Why would they say that, here, now, in front of everyone? Then my grandmother Ruth Bennett, sitting near the porch with her cane across her lap, looked up sharply. Her eyes, always gentle, turned fierce. She didn't say a word yet, but I saw something in her expression, a decision forming. Before I could speak, before I could defend myself, Nathan reached for my hand under the table. His fingers trembled. My best friend Carla mouthed across the table, "Don't cry." But how could I not? I'd spent my whole life trying to prove I was good enough, and in one cruel sentence, my family had turned me into a villain. I wanted to shout, to explain everything I'd done for them, but I swallowed my words and stood still, letting the silence do the talking. If you've ever been betrayed by the very people who were supposed to love you, you know that silence hurts more than shouting. And to you, listening right now, have you ever felt that? Have you ever stood in a room full of family and still felt completely alone? If you have, tell me in the comments. I read every story myself. Maybe we can help each other heal. And if you want to know what really happened next, what grandmother Ruth revealed that changed everything, make sure you subscribe and stay with me till the end. Because that night didn't just break me, it showed me who my family really was, and what my love had been paying for all along. I grew up in the quiet suburbs on the south side of Asheville, in a small white house with peeling shutters and a maple tree that turned blood red every October. To anyone driving by, we looked like a normal, happy family. But inside those walls, everything revolved around my younger brother, Eric. When I was a kid, I didn't question it. I was the responsible one, the helper, the little adult. I did my homework on my own, kept the house clean, and reminded Dad to take his lunch. Mom used to say, "You're my steady girl, Lauren. I can always count on you." At 8, I thought that was love. I didn't realize it meant she'd never really look out for me again. Eric was 3 years younger, loud, impulsive, impossible to ignore. If he forgot his project, I stayed up gluing the poster. When he crashed his bike, I was the one who ran for ice. When he cried, Mom held him. When I cried, she said I was being dramatic. By the time I hit high school, the pattern was set in stone. I made honor roll every semester. Eric barely passed, but still, at dinner, Mom would beam at him. "You'll find your path, sweetie." Dad would nod, proud of his free-spirited son. My report cards sat on the counter until they yellowed. When I left for college, I paid half my tuition with scholarships and half by cleaning dorm bathrooms at dawn. I'd call home exhausted, only to hear Mom complaining about how Eric needs new cleats or gas money's tight. So I sent home $100 here, $200 there. It became a habit, helping. By 25, I was working as a junior designer at an architecture firm downtown. Eric, then 19, had dropped out of community college after a semester. He said classes were boring. Mom said I was too hard on him. Dad said, "He'll figure it out, just like you did." When Eric decided to try again at a private college in Florida, Mom called me crying. "We can't afford tuition," she said. "He just needs one chance." So I took out a loan for $35,000 in my own name and wired the payment. I told myself I was investing in my brother's future. I didn't tell Nathan, my boyfriend at the time, because I was embarrassed. Who takes on debt for someone who doesn't even say thank you? But that's what family meant to me then. Giving until it hurts, believing they'd do the same. Every Christmas, I came home with gifts. A new coat for Mom, tools for Dad's workshop, sneakers for Eric. He'd smirk and say, "You must be rolling in it, huh?" I'd laugh it off, pretending it didn't sting. When I bought my first condo, a small place with white walls and a view of the mountains, I invited them to see it. Mom stood in the doorway, scanning every detail. "It's nice," she said finally, "but it feels cold. You work too much, Lauren." Eric sprawled on my couch, shoes on the cushion. "Must be nice not paying rent to anyone," he said. Then he opened my fridge and drank the last of my orange juice. I told myself that's just how brothers are. That's what love looks like. Teasing, boundaries crossed, forgiveness expected. The truth was simpler. I had become their safety net. And they had mistaken my love for obligation. Only one person ever saw it clearly, Grandma Ruth. Every Sunday, she'd call me over for lemonade on her porch. She was small and sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who noticed everything. One afternoon, as we sat watching the sunset bleed over the mountains, she took my hand. "Lauren, you have a good heart, but don't let them use it up. People who depend on your kindness forget it's a gift." I remember smiling, nodding, not really believing her. Family doesn't use family, I thought. Years later, standing in that backyard, hearing my parents defend Eric while tearing me down, I realized Grandma Ruth had seen it coming all along. Back then, though, I still believed I could fix it. If I just worked harder, gave more, stayed humble, they'd finally see me. They'd love me the way I loved them. I couldn't have known that the very sacrifices I made to hold us together were the same ones they'd later twist into weapons against me. The morning of my parents' anniversary started like something out of a magazine. The backyard glowed in soft sunlight, the tables lined with white linens and mason jars filled with peonies. I had arrived at 6 a.m. to make sure everything was perfect, just like I'd done my whole life. Nathan carried boxes from the car while I double-checked the seating chart. My best friend Carla, who had volunteered to help, teased me about how organized I was. "Lauren, you're not running a wedding," she laughed. "You're throwing a party." "A family party," I said. "That's worse." By noon, guests started arriving. Neighbors, church friends, even my old high school teacher. Everyone smiled, complimented the setup, asked how work was going. For a while, I actually felt proud. The band played light jazz, kids ran across the grass chasing bubbles. Mom wore the floral dress I'd bought her last Christmas, and Dad looked 10 years younger in his navy suit. For 2 hours, things were peaceful. I remember thinking maybe, finally, I'd done something right. Then Eric arrived. An hour late, sunglasses on, shirt untucked, and a half-empty beer in hand. He didn't greet me. He just smirked and said, "Wow, you really went all out, huh? Guess you wanted everyone to see how generous you are." I forced a smile. Just wanted it to be special for Mom and Dad. "Right," he said, "because nothing says family love like renting a catering company and acting like Martha Stewart." Carla, standing beside me, shot him a glare. "Maybe say thank you instead." He shrugged and wandered off toward the buffet. From that moment, the air shifted. His voice carried, mocking the food, the decorations, even the playlist. "This chicken tastes like something from a gas station," he joked loudly. A few people laughed, out of discomfort. My stomach knotted. I told myself to breathe. Don't ruin the day. But then he did something worse. He stood up in front of everyone, 50 people, and raised his glass. "Here's to my sister Lauren, the hero of the Mitchell family, the one who never lets us forget she's the successful one." Laughter rippled across the tables. My hands froze around the serving spoon. I heard Mom giggle. Dad clinked his glass, joining in. "Oh, Eric," Mom said, smiling, "don't tease your sister like that." "Why not?" he replied. "She loves the attention." That's when I felt it, heat crawling up my neck, anger boiling under the humiliation. I looked at my parents, expecting them to stop him, to defend me. Instead, Dad leaned back and said, "He's not wrong, sweetheart. You've always liked to make things big." Something cracked inside me. I set down the spoon, my voice trembling. "I planned this for you, for both of you. I paid for everything because I wanted to do something good." Mom's smile vanished. "We didn't ask you to," she said sharply. "You always act like the world owes you a thank you note." Dad's eyes narrowed, his tone cold. "Honestly, Lauren, sometimes I wonder if you even understand what family means." Then came the line that burned itself into my memory. "If you hadn't been so busy with your fancy job, maybe this family wouldn't have fallen apart." The crowd went silent. Forks hovered mid-air. Even the music seemed to stop. I felt everyone's eyes on me, neighbors, coworkers, distant cousins, all witnessing my parents dismantle me piece by piece. Nathan stood, ready to intervene, but I shook my head. If I spoke, I'd cry. And I refused to give them that. Eric smirked across the table. "See, she can't even defend herself because she knows I'm right." Carla muttered under her breath, "You're unbelievable," and walked toward him, but I caught her wrist. "Don't," I whispered. "It's not worth it." I wasn't angry because they embarrassed me. I was angry because I realized in that moment they believed every word they said. All those years of sending money, answering midnight calls, covering Eric's debts, they didn't see any of it as love. They saw it as proof that I owed them. As I stood there, surrounded by laughter turning to whispers, something inside me began to shift. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was fury. Cold, quiet fury that hummed under my skin. And beneath it, one clear thought: they will never see what they've done, unless someone finally makes them. What I didn't know yet was that someone already planned to. Grandma Ruth had been watching the entire time, silent, eyes sharp, like a storm waiting to break. I don't remember sitting down. One minute I was standing beside the dessert table, the next I was staring at my own trembling hands. The hum of voices faded, replaced by the steady pounding of my heartbeat in my ears. Someone, maybe Carla, tried to hand me a glass of water. I couldn't lift it. My throat felt tight, my chest even tighter. Every word my parents had thrown at me replayed in my mind like a cruel recording. This family would have been better off without you. I wanted to disappear. Nathan knelt beside me, whispering, "Let's go. You don't have to stay." But my body wouldn't move. I kept thinking about all the birthdays I'd paid for, the bills I'd helped cover, the nights I'd listened to my mother cry about money while pretending I was already exhausted from 12-hour workdays. Was it ever love, or was it just convenience? People avoided looking at me as they cleared their plates. Some left early, murmuring excuses. Others lingered, curious, waiting for another explosion that never came. Across the yard, Eric was laughing with a cousin. Mom sat with her arms crossed, refusing to meet my eyes. Dad poured himself another drink, shoulders rigid, jaw tight. And there I was, standing in the middle of the chaos I had paid for. The fairy lights I'd strung up swayed in the breeze. A song played softly from the speakers, one my parents used to dance to. But they didn't dance. They didn't even speak. For the first time in my life, I felt the full weight of being an outsider in my own home. It wasn't about that one moment. It was the realization that it had always been this way. I had built a life trying to earn my place in a family that had already decided I didn't belong. Grandma Ruth was still seated near the porch, watching quietly. Her hands rested on her cane, her lips pressed together. I couldn't tell if she was angry or heartbroken, or both. I finally stood up, my legs shaky. Nathan moved to steady me, but I waved him off. "I'm fine," though my voice came out thin and uneven. I walked toward the house, past guests who pretended not to see my tears. The smell of food lingered in the air, sweet and heavy. I paused at the kitchen doorway and looked back one last time. My mother was laughing again as if nothing had happened. My father clinked glasses with Eric. The laughter echoed faintly against the walls of the home I had once believed was filled with love. Something in me broke then, not loudly, but quietly like glass cracking beneath velvet. As I stepped outside into the night, I heard Grandma Ruth's voice call softly behind me. "Lauren, don't let them steal your peace." I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Because peace at that moment felt like something I would never find again. The next morning, sunlight crept across my living room floor, but I couldn't feel it. I sat at my kitchen table, still in last night's clothes, the smell of wine and smoke clinging to my hair. My phone buzzed. Texts from Carla, from Nathan, from guests who didn't know what to say. "Are you okay? I'm so sorry for what they said. That was brutal." I didn't answer any of them. My mind was still frozen in that backyard. The laughter, the humiliation, the look in my mother's eyes when she told me I was the problem. Around 9, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Grandma Ruth stood there, her small frame wrapped in a beige coat, her hair tied neatly back. She didn't say a word, just handed me a paper bag that smelled like cinnamon. Inside were her homemade rolls and a thermos of coffee. I tried to smile. "You didn't have to drive all the way here." "Yes, I did," she said, stepping inside. "You deserve the truth before they twist it any further." She sat at my table, placed her cane beside her, and folded her hands. "Lauren, I know what happened last night broke you. But you need to understand it didn't start there. It started years ago." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Her eyes softened. "Your mother and father have been lying to you. About money, about me." At first I didn't understand. She sighed, took a sip of coffee, then looked at me the way only grandmothers can. Half love, half heartbreak. 5 years ago, I gave them $50,000. I told them it was to help me fix the house roof and pay medical bills. But I didn't need it. I gave it because I wanted to help them cover Eric's tuition. They told me you knew. They said you'd refuse to help. I stared at her. My throat tightened. Refused? She nodded. They said you didn't care about family anymore, that you said you were done with them. I believed them, Lauren, until last night, until I saw what they did to you. Her words landed like stones in my stomach. I thought of the years I'd been wiring money, signing checks, paying Eric's bills, while believing my parents were struggling. All that time, they'd had her money too, my grandmother's savings. They used both of us, she whispered. And when you gave more, they let you, because it made them look like victims. I pressed my palms against the table, trying to steady myself. So, while I was paying his rent and tuition, they were using my money to buy him a car, she finished softly. Silence filled the room. I could hear my own heartbeat again, just like last night, but this time it wasn't from shame. It was from anger. Cold, clean anger. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice shaking. Because I didn't know until last month. I found the bank statements while sorting through your grandfather's papers. When I confronted them, they swore they'd pay it back. They never did. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was warm, steady. You've carried a burden that was never yours. They let you believe you had to save them, and when you couldn't anymore, they blamed you for being strong. I didn't realize I was crying until she squeezed my hand tighter. You're not wrong for wanting peace, Lauren. You're wrong for thinking you had to earn it. Those words cracked something open inside me, the part of me that still believed love meant sacrifice. I wiped my tears and took a deep breath. I can't keep living like this, I said. I can't keep paying for their lies. Grandma Ruth smiled faintly, proud and sad all at once. Then stop, she said. Sometimes walking away isn't betrayal, it's survival. Her words echoed in my chest long after she left. I sat there for hours, staring at the empty coffee cup she'd left behind. By evening, I had made my decision. I would no longer fund Eric's education. I would no longer pay their bills, and I would no longer apologize for choosing myself. That night, as the sky darkened over Asheville, I opened my laptop and began writing emails. To the university, to the landlord, to the bank. Each click felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I hadn't known I'd lost. For the first time in years, I wasn't acting out of guilt. I was acting out of clarity. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of calm I didn't recognize. The kind that comes right after a storm, when the air is strangely quiet, almost gentle. My hands didn't shake anymore. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, like it had finally decided to stop apologizing for beating. I brewed a pot of coffee, sat at my dining table, and opened my laptop again. The emails from the night before blinked back at me, waiting for confirmation. The first one was addressed to Asheville State University's financial office. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing my sponsorship for student Eric Mitchell. Please remove my information as his financial guarantor. I hovered over the send button for a moment, then pressed it. Just one click, but it felt like cutting a cord that had tied me down for years. Next came the call to the property management office that handled Eric's apartment lease. "This is Lauren Mitchell," I said, voice steady. "I'm terminating my co-signer agreement. He'll need to provide a new guarantor within 30 days. The woman on the other end hesitated. "Are you sure? That could leave your brother without housing." "I'm sure," I said, quietly. Finally, I called my bank to cancel the credit card I'd opened for his emergencies. The clerk asked if I wanted to transfer the balance before closing it. I said, "No, let him handle it." When I hung up, I exhaled, a long, shaky breath that turned into something between a sob and a laugh. For the first time in my adult life, the silence in my apartment didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. Around noon, my phone rang. Eric. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "You're cutting me off?" he shouted. No greeting, no pause. Are you serious? You can't do this to me. I already did, I said, calmly. You're unbelievable, Lauren. After everything I've been through, you're just leaving me to rot? You're 23, Eric. It's time you learn what it means to stand on your own. You think you're better than me just because you have a job and a fancy apartment? You've always acted like that. I closed my eyes, let him rant, and then said softly, No, Eric. I've acted like someone who loves you. You just never saw it that way. He hung up with a string of curses. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. Mom. Lauren, she started, voice trembling with anger. How could you do this to your brother? He's your family. So am I, but that never seemed to matter to you. You're being dramatic. We're struggling, and you're just walking away? You lied to me, I said, my tone colder now. You took Grandma's money and let me pay for the same thing. You let me believe you couldn't afford tuition while you bought him a car. That's not true, she snapped, but her voice cracked. Grandma showed me the bank statements. Silence. Then a soft, bitter laugh. So that's it? You're turning against us now? No, I'm just done letting you turn me into your solution. Before she could respond, I ended the call. My hands were steady as I set the phone down. Nathan arrived an hour later, holding 2 cups of coffee. He didn't say anything at first, just sat across the table, studying my face. You look lighter, he said finally. I feel lighter. He smiled, then reached across the table and took my hand. You didn't just cut them off. You reclaimed yourself. That night, I met Carla for dinner downtown. She listened quietly as I told her about the calls, about Grandma Ruth's visit, about the way everything finally made sense. You know, she said, swirling her wine, most people would have exploded. You handled it with grace. I laughed. Grace isn't exactly what I felt. Maybe not, but choosing peace over revenge, that's what real strength looks like. I thought about that as I walked home later, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement. For years, I had confused peace with silence. I thought keeping quiet meant being strong, but now I knew. Real peace requires noise first, the noise of breaking free. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail from Mom. I didn't listen to it. I deleted it before the first word played. And for the first time in my adult life, the silence that followed didn't hurt. It felt like freedom. 6 months later, my life looked nothing like it used to. The silence that once haunted me had become a kind of music, soft, steady, peaceful. Nathan and I had settled into an easy rhythm in my little apartment overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains. Mornings started with coffee and sunlight spilling through the kitchen window. Evenings ended with laughter instead of tension. No phone calls demanding money, no guilt-laced messages from Mom, no constant fear of being the bad daughter. Just quiet and choice. I still thought about them sometimes, my parents, Eric, but the memories no longer burned. They felt distant, like a chapter I'd finally finished reading. Through a mutual friend, I heard that Eric had taken a job at a coffee shop downtown. Mom told people he was finding himself. Dad still avoided the topic altogether. I didn't feel vindictive. If anything, I hoped he learned something about effort, about humility, about what love looks like when it's not handed to you. Grandma Ruth and I saw each other every weekend. We'd sit on her porch, sipping lemonade, watching the sun fade behind the trees. She'd always ask the same question. Do you regret it? And I'd always give the same answer. Not anymore. Because the truth was, walking away hadn't broken me, it had built me. I stopped defining love as how much pain I could endure for someone else. I started defining it as how much truth I could live with. It took me 34 years to understand that setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Family shouldn't demand your loyalty at the cost of your self-respect. One evening, as Grandma Ruth packed leftovers into foil, she said quietly, You know, I used to think forgiveness meant letting people back in, but sometimes forgiveness just means wishing them peace from a distance. I smiled because that's exactly what I'd been learning, how to forgive without returning to the fire. Before leaving, I hugged her tightly. Her voice was soft against my shoulder. You did good, Lauren. You didn't let bitterness win. Driving home, I rolled the windows down, the summer air thick with the smell of rain. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt whole. So, if you're listening to this, maybe because you've been through something similar. If your family made you feel like love had to be earned or that kindness was a debt, please hear me. You have the right to peace. Setting boundaries isn't betrayal, it's survival. And sometimes, survival is the most honest form of love you can offer yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. And if any of it hit close to home, share your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear that they're not alone.